There are recordings of unimaginable horror in the world, even though they exist, some of which was never meant to be seen. I present to you the Lost Tapes, featuring Kaylena Orr. He had been intruding on abandoned houses for a few years now. He loved going inside these houses alone. He has never been afraid and can handle himself well. He drove out to his cousin Greg's house last week to drop off a Halloween costume he let him borrow, and on the way, he noticed an old abandoned house, one he had not seen before. From the street, the house was a couple hundred yards away, sitting by itself, barely visible because of the trees blocking it. It looked quite old. He has been looking for an old, creepy house to explore for a few weeks now, and this house was perfect. He did not go the first night that he saw it. He had plans with his girlfriend that night. 3 days passed, and he told his girlfriend what he was going to do, and she was not surprised. He drove out to the street the house was on and parked his car on the side of the road. He jumped over the wooden fence surrounding the field and began walking towards the house. As he got closer, he felt excited, as he always did. Exploring abandoned houses was quite the thrill, and he was addicted. He approached the house and noticed that the front door was boarded up, as were the windows beside it. He walked around the house to the back, and at the back door, there was a table beside it. On the table, he saw a cell phone and a wallet. The phone was an old flip phone with a cracked screen, and the wallet was empty except for a business card to a diner which he recognized as one he had been to before and was not too far away. He moved his attention to the back door, which was slightly open. He made his way inside the house. The back of the house was dark and empty, which was a letdown. He walked through the dining room and into the kitchen. Old appliances had been left there and were covered in dust. He stopped in the middle of the kitchen when he heard a sound that came from the second floor. He got excited and nervous and immediately walked through the kitchen and to the staircase by the front of the house. He looked up the stairs and saw that the light faded at the top. He walked up, and each step creaked under his shoes. When he reached the top, he heard another sound. It came from a bedroom with a closed door right in front of him. He wasted no time and opened the door. To his surprise, there was a chair in the middle of the room, facing an old-looking television set, sitting on a small end table. There was a VCR on top of the television, and a tape sticking out of it. He walked over and pushed the tape inside. He hit the on button on the front of the television, and the screen became bright white. He then hit play on the VCR and sat down in the chair behind him. Right away, a picture came up on the screen. The video was being shot from a camera that was up high in the corner of a room. It showed a young man sitting in a chair facing a television that was sitting on an end table. The young man watched the screen, and then suddenly a person came out of the closet and began stabbing the young man repeatedly in the face and the chest. Then the video cut out. He slowly turned all the way around and looked to the corner of the room behind him. A camera hung on the wall. He then turned back around, and there was a person standing in front of him.
I've been close with my grandparents since I was very young. They used to babysit me when I got out of school in the 4th grade, and my grandpa had the best collection of movies. At that time, they were all in VHS format, and I would always sit in front of the TV in their basement and have a blast sorting through the collection. Movies have always been my thing, and I probably watched every single one of my grandpa's movies 3 times or more. Mixed in with the movies were home videos. Some of them had my parents and I on them. Some of them had my cousins. But one particular one had something else. A home video of something I don't think I was meant to see. It was a typical day, and after school I was down in the basement, and my grandparents knew what I was doing as usual and left me to do it. I found the VHS tape sitting by itself behind the VCR. I looked at it and noticed it was blank, with nothing written on it at all. I saw inside the tape and also noticed that whoever was watching it last stopped it somewhere in the middle of the movie, or whatever it was. My curiosity was sparked, and I slipped it into the VCR. Immediately upon pressing play, on the screen I saw a little boy sitting in the middle of a room. He had a look of exhaustion on his face, and his nose was bleeding. He did and said nothing, but whoever was holding the camera set it down on something in a way that the boy was still visible, and whoever it was walked partially into view. I could see their legs, and a rip on the back of the knee in their jeans as they walked up to the boy and stood in front of him. The boy began to cry softly, and then suddenly, the tall person began hitting the boy in the face over and over. I pressed stop on the VCR and sat there, completely dumbfounded and confused. It was difficult at that age for me to process and understand. I thought maybe it was just a scary movie that looked real, and I justified it as that. It was just way too scary for me, even though I normally loved watching horror movies. After sitting there for a while, I walked upstairs and sat on the sofa in the living room. My grandpa wasn't home, but my grandma was in the kitchen doing something. I just sat there and thought about what I'd seen, but never asked my grandma about it. I felt I might get in trouble because, as I said before, it felt like something I shouldn't have seen. My mom showed up at the usual time to pick me up a couple hours later, and after a while, I had stopped thinking about the tape. That day was a Friday, and sometime on the following Sunday, I was terrified at the realization that I had forgotten to eject the tape. The next day after school, my grandpa picked me up from school, and I was scared that he would say something about the tape. But he didn't. Maybe he didn't even know, I thought. When he got to their house, I acted normal and went down to the basement. I hit eject on the VCR, and nothing happened. I pushed open the plastic flap, and the tape was gone. I looked behind the VCR, and it wasn't there either. I checked in every movie case and behind everything and did not find it. My grandma walked by upstairs and shouted down to me, "What are you watching, Danny?" I scanned the movies in front of me and quickly shouted back, The Princess Bride." My grandma didn't reply, and I put the movie into the VCR and hit play. After a short time, I was engaged in the movie and was no longer thinking about the blank tape. My grandma walked downstairs and handed me a bowl of cookies and put a glass of milk on the end table next to me. When she turned around to do that, I glanced at her legs. My heart started beating faster and faster. I saw the rip on the back of the knee in her jeans. She was the person in the tape. She walked back upstairs, and I sat there in shock. I continued to go to their house after school for 3 more years, and I never saw the blank tape again.
You can find all kinds of things demolishing houses. Old coins, old newspapers, but you never expect to find a tape, a VHS tape. I was working in a house that was over 100 years old. and my partner, who was due to help me that day, called in sick. I first demolished the kitchen and then moved to the dining room right next to it. As I was tearing down the old drywall, I saw the corner of a black object behind the old insulation. My safety glasses were fogged up and I couldn't see very well, so I went to the bathroom to wash my face and glasses and then returned. I pulled the old tape out of the wall. It had something weird and creepy written on it, and I set it aside and kept working. That night, when I returned home, I brought the tape with me and looked in my garage for an old VCR that could play it. After looking for a while, I finally found one. I was so excited to see what was on this tape because I thought for sure it was something interesting. What I saw on the tape was not what I expected. I saw a woman being murdered. It was the most graphic thing I'd ever seen, and let's just say it involved a pocket knife and broken glass bottles. I called the police after I was done vomiting, and they advised me to bring the tape into the department. I did, and they took it, but not before I made a copy. The police didn't call me back until 2 weeks later and asked what house I found it in exactly and under what circumstances. I told them, and they never contacted me again. I held on to my copy for a few years and only watched it one more time before throwing it away. The only thing I still wonder about the tape was who that girl was, and in my opinion, it looked a lot like the old woman who lived there while I was doing the remodel. I let it leave my mind until a few months ago when I was bored and decided to research the woman online. She had a twin sister. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you very much to Kaylena Orr for joining me. If you have not already, please go visit Kaylena's channel and check it out. And be sure to watch the other half of this collaboration while there. Subscribe to her channel if you haven't already. And until next time.